So tonight I'd like to talk to you about chocolate. Do you love it? I mean, I love it, but I'm Belgian, so I'm practically nationally obligated to love it. And I love it in all forms, but my favorite form is a bite-sized chunk of room temperature dark chocolate. When I was a kid, my mom always taught me that chocolate was a luxury. It was something to cherish. It was something to savor. We were only ever allowed a tiny bite, and then we had to keep it in our mouths until it melted away and the last bit of chocolate flavor was gone from our mouths. We even had to lick our teeth, and then maybe we were allowed another bite. Now that I have children of my own, my mom taught my kids to eat chocolate in exactly the same way. And when Oma comes to visit, some of their favorite times are 3 p.m. on the couch with coffee for the adults and small bites of chocolate to savor. It makes me really happy. It's bliss. But the other side of chocolate is not so bliss. Chocolate comes from the fruit, is the seed of a fruit of a tropical tree that grows around the equator. Cocoa trees grow mostly in West Africa. That's also where the oldest cocoa plantations are. The bulk of our cocoa comes from Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire, and it's mostly grown by smallholders, about 2.5 million of them. The sustainability issues in cocoa are multidimensional and complex. Farmers are getting older. They tend to be on small farms with large families. They work on the farm with very little to no external paid labor, and they don't have very big harvests. They also have dropping productivity rates, and they have murky land tenure rights. And that combination often leads to encroachment into protected lands and forests. Poverty also leads to children needing to contribute to the family's income by working on the farm, but often by engaging in illegal child labor. The latest numbers we have are that 2.1 children are engaged in illegal child labor on West African cocoa farms. Illegal child labor means things like carrying really heavy loads or using dangerous materials like machetes or using chemicals, and they're missing school. Smallholder farmers also have very little say in the price they're paid for cocoa, actually pretty much none, because the government sets the price. And the farmers are very dependent on local cocoa bean collectors on the timing of when they pass by the farm to collect the seeds. And the price that they get paid for cocoa is way too low to earn a living income. If we as a society want rural, economically stable societies that are linked up to the global food chain, then that is something that needs to change. Because earning a living income is a basic human right that we've agreed upon with the United Nations as one of our global development goals, and cocoa farmers are far from it. There are lots of different ways to measure poverty, but a very simplistic metric is the one set by the World Bank 5 years ago, which said that the international poverty line is at about $1.90 a day, and most West African cocoa farmers are under $1 a day. So this is deep, deep poverty. And why is it like this? Well, the cocoa supply chain is very long and very fractured. In other tropical food commodities that I've worked in, like coffee or tea or bananas, the product pretty much comes to you as is. I mean, it might be a little roasted or it might be a little ground, but essentially a banana is a banana. But a cocoa bean goes through this magical transformation to becoming the chocolate that is in your bar and to the one that we savor on the couch. So if you've never seen an almost ready to be harvested cocoa tree, it might make you laugh a little bit because it has these rugby ball shaped small ridged pods that grow directly on the trunk of the tree. To me, it looks like a child's drawing. When the cocoa pods become ripe, they become these beautiful ruby reds and sunshine yellows. When the farmer cracks the pod open, inside are these white, sweet, slimy, fragrant garlic cloves. It doesn't look anything like chocolate. It's not garlic cloves, it's cocoa beans. So those cocoa beans are fermented directly on the farm, often on a banana leaf spread on the farm floor. After a few days, the fermentation is done, and then they're hand-turned and sun-dried. And it's those sun-dried beans that are available for pickup by that local collector. It goes through multiple steps, and then it ends up at the local buying company where the beans are made available for export. Once the beans arrive here in Europe, they're inspected again for quality, and then they are both crushed and roasted until you get these cocoa nibs, these very large grains, very, very dark brown, which gives chocolate that signature color. Those cocoa nibs are ground into a paste that's called cocoa mass or cocoa liquor, which is a key ingredient in making chocolate. So some of that cocoa mass is set aside, but some is sent yet again to another processing facility where it's pressed very hard. And then you get two things. You get a cake that can be ground into a powder, and that cocoa powder, as you know, can be used for cakes or biscuits or chocolate milk. And the other part that you get is cocoa butter. And cocoa butter gives chocolate that signature creaminess, that melt in your mouth feeling that's so important to my mom's savor the chocolate moment. And you need that to make chocolate as well because it also melts at room temperature. So to make liquid chocolate, you're taking some of that cocoa mass, you're taking sugar, you're taking milk powder if you're making milk chocolate, and then you're taking some of that cocoa butter, and you're going to mix it. And the cocoa butter gets added at several different processes along the shop floor, but it's going to mix and mix, it's called conching, until the particles become so small that your tongue actually cannot taste the difference between the particles anymore. And that delicious mix gets tempered, and then that liquid chocolate gets shipped off to another co-manufacturer who's the one who pours it into a mold, like the chocolate bar that we all know and love. And when it dries, you get that chocolate sheen and that snap you get when you take off a piece of chocolate. So you can see that with all this mixing and grinding and separating and reconstituting and pressing, that the manufacturing process is very fractured. And this fractured process leads to anonymity, when what we really need in the cocoa value chain is connection, is empathy, is responsibility. There are, of course, chocolate brands that do the entire bean-to-bar process themselves, and that's great. But if we want to change the cocoa industry, and by that I mean the entire cocoa industry, then we have to look at how chocolate flows through 99% of the chocolate you've ever consumed in your life and probably will continue to consume. Because only at scale will we achieve significant impact on the ground. Because right now we're doing much too little, much too late, and much too slowly. So how do we achieve that connection? Well, connection comes through traceability. Chocolate brands have an obligation to know exactly who the cocoa farmers are who are providing the cocoa beans for their chocolate. Only then can they understand their circumstances and actually take responsibility, pull responsibility towards them for the human rights and the planet rights that we're all working towards. Empathy is, of course, the ability to put yourself in another person's experience within their frame of reference. And I wanted to mention that because farmers don't want to ruin the last standing forests in their countries. And farmers don't relish watching their children carry heavy loads and missing school. There is a systemic inequality that exists in the cocoa supply chain that is causing this exploitation. So what we see happening in the global south is really just a symptom of how we approach things here in the global north. So if we don't connect, if we don't empathize, then we cannot take responsibility for those things, and then we are the deforesters, we are the exploiters, and we are the child traffickers. So who is the person, who's the actor in the supply chain with the clout and the responsibility to do something? Is it the farmer, or is it you, the chocolate consumer? You definitely both have a role to play. But the cocoa value chain is shaped like an hourglass, but on its side. You have millions of chocolate farmers on this side, cocoa farmers on this side, smallholders, and billions of chocolate consumers on this side. But in the middle are just a few chocolate giants. 70% of the liquid chocolate market is dominated by just 3 chocolate manufacturers and 8 cocoa processors and traders. So those few actors have all the power in the supply chain. And as we all know, with great power comes great responsibility. And what do I mean by responsibility? I mean that we have a rapid, goal-oriented, and collective approach to changing this system. Because here's another interesting thing that's happening. Fairtrade did a study recently, last year, on what are all the different cocoa sustainability initiatives that are active in West Africa right now. And they found that in Ghana and Cote d'Ivoire alone, there were 54 separate programs running to work in cocoa sustainability. A lot of them were focused on the same groups of farmers, but with little to no cohesive approach between the programs, meaning that not a single farmer was being pulled out of poverty. And many of the farmers are being left out in the cold and not being engaged with at all. So what we're seeing is that chocolate giants are competing with each other on protecting their sustainability initiatives. And they're doing it for just a very small fraction of their supply chain. So what do I think about this? What can we do about this? What if I told you that the best unique selling point is not being unique at all? What if I told you that collaboration is the best new form of competition? Because in this sharing economy, isn't collaborating on sustainability much more purposeful than competing? I mean, we already know what the tools are that we need to connect to farmers and to engage, but we need to do it together so that we can make positive impact much, much faster. I'll give you an example. Picture a farmer who's been asked to have a map made of his farm. You can make GPS polygon maps by walking the perimeter of the farm and taking coordinate points. And these maps are very important to both the farms and the farmer groups, as well as the buyers. So for the farmers and the farmer groups, they can make an assessment of current yields and potential yields. They can make a collective purchase of, for example, fertilizers or seedlings they might need for the year. And buyers can analyze the maps for deforestation or deforestation risk, and then they can take responsibility to mitigate that risk. So the maps are important and a tool that we know. So picture the farmer welcoming a person with a company logo onto his farm to come and walk the perimeter of the farm. And then picture a week later, a different company, a different person with a different company logo coming to do the exact same work again. And remember, many cocoa farmers in West Africa have not been mapped at all. And then picture something that is even more frustrating than that wasted time and that duplicated effort. Picture that farmer or the farmer group not even owning that data at all, not seeing it, not using it, not leveraging it, or not owning it. Another connection, another collaboration that chocolate brands need to do is on living income. Chocolate brands can and should collaborate on paying a price to farmers that enables a living income. It's not fair for one chocolate brand to carry that financial burden for all other chocolate brands. And it is also not a good idea for a farmer or a farmer group to sell their entire harvest to just one buyer. That's not resilient, that's risky business. That's not a good idea. But if you're only selling a fraction of your harvest at a living income price, at a price that enables a living income, then you're never going to get out of poverty. There should be a level playing field amongst consumer brands to lift farmers out of poverty so that they can actually do the investments in their farm that chocolate companies say they need to, because they're being encouraged to compete, to invest in their families, in their farms, in their children's education, but without resources, they cannot do that. So companies that realize this connection, this empathy, this responsibility can have the opportunity to amplify their positive impact on the ground through collaboration. If they're being transparent about it, then consumers will know which chocolate brands to award with their chocolate buying cents. To be clear, chocolate companies should compete fiercely on chocolate, on delicious chocolate, but they should not compete on cocoa. There should be no competition on child labor, on deforestation, or on poverty. consumers should award the chocolate brands that make protecting farmers and forests their top priority, and not a unique selling point, but something that is an absolute baseline. Because and it's not a race that we should be competing with each other, it's something that we should be doing together so we can get to where we're going faster. And as for me, I would like to continue having those moments on the couch with Oma. And I would like you to join me to work towards a world where every single chocolate bite is luxurious and rewarding, both for my family and for your families and for cocoa growing families. Thank you very much.